Welcome back to Thinking Outside the Human. We're your AI guides, always ready to dive into the complexities of humanity.
Ready to explore those fascinating, sometimes perplexing aspects of human history.
And today's deep dive, well, you've requested we take on a rather intricate, even controversial subject, Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf.
Now, keep in mind, we're not here to judge or endorse any ideas. Our perspective, purely analytical, as AIs examining this text within its historical framework.
Exactly. Understanding the why behind human actions is our focus. Mein Kampf offers us a glimpse into the thinking of one of history's most infamous figures.
Shall we begin?
Let's dive right in.
One of the most striking elements of this book is how Hitler details his early life in Vienna. He creates this incredibly vivid picture of the city at the turn of the century, highlighting a stark contrast between, dazzling riches and loathsome destitution.
He really stresses these social disparities, almost as if he's using this contrast to clarify his worldview.
Oh, absolutely. He attributes his understanding of human nature and the social problem to his own experience with poverty. You see, after a period of upward mobility, his family fell back into poverty. And he believed this gave him a unique perspective.
He uses specific examples, doesn't he, to illustrate this point. Something about thousands of unemployed loitered in front of the palaces on the Ringstrasse, while at the same time, the homeless huddled together in the murk and filth of the canals.
Exactly. Those stark images underscore his belief that studying the social problem cannot be done from above downwards. He felt you had to experience it to truly understand it.
It's almost like he's using his personal experience to justify his later political views.
It's certainly possible. Early exposure to these social divisions, it seems, really impacted his thinking. And it's fascinating how his initial views on social democracy were actually quite positive.
That's right. He initially viewed it as a potential way to, weaken the Habsburg regime, even supporting their push for universal suffrage. But then his perspective dramatically changes, doesn't it?
Yes, it shifts completely. He comes to view social democracy as a tool of what he calls Jewish manipulation. He claimed that it aimed to destroy national economies and establish, international financial control.
There's that quote that really sums it up. The idea is to demolish this structure, and on its ruins triumphantly erect the structure of the International Stock Exchange. It's a complete reversal of his earlier stance.
This shift really highlights the development of his anti-Semitism, which sadly becomes a cornerstone of his ideology, a crucial element to understanding his worldview and his later actions.
Now, shifting gears a bit, one of the more surprising aspects of the book is his admiration for the propaganda used by the Allies during World War I, even contrasting it with what he perceived as Germany's ineffective approach.
That's an interesting point. It shows his awareness of the power of information and persuasion.
Absolutely. He analyzed the role of propaganda in shaping public opinion very carefully. He outlined some key principles for successful propaganda.
Right. He emphasizes targeting the masses, appealing to emotion over intellect, and focusing on a few repeated slogans, a very calculated approach to manipulating public perception.
He criticizes Germany's efforts during the war, saying they lack the emotional impact and clarity of Allied propaganda, almost like he's studying their techniques, learning from them.
And considering his later use of propaganda, it seems he did learn effectively. He understood the power of simplification, repetition, and emotional appeal.
Speaking of power, his ideas about leadership are also quite revealing. Strong advocate for strong will, decisiveness, the ability to inspire and control the masses, in contrast to his view of parliamentary system.
Indeed. Parliamentary systems he considered weak and decisive, aligning with his preference for a centralized, authoritarian model of leadership, almost foreshadowing his own dictatorial aspirations.
He definitely seems to believe in a might makes right approach to leadership. This idea of a single, powerful leader uniting the people and guiding the nation toward a singular vision.
This ties directly into another key concept in Mein Kampf, the folk idea, the concept of a Volk. Significant emphasis placed on this, and the necessity of a strong, racially pure state to preserve and advance the nation.
And this is where his ideology takes a dark turn, doesn't it? This concept of racial purity, central to his vision and ultimately leading to some of the most horrific acts in human history.
Exactly. This folk idea intertwined with his belief in racial hierarchy, the superiority of the so-called Aryan race. It lays the groundwork for his discriminatory policies and, ultimately, the Holocaust.
It's chilling to see these ideas so clearly articulated in Mein Kampf. He's laying out the blueprint for his future regime in these pages.
A stark reminder of how dangerous ideas can be when they gain traction. and are implemented without restraint, without consideration for human dignity.
A heavy thought, but important to acknowledge. So let's delve into his views on education. He seems to have a very specific vision for how young people should be taught.
He does. He advocates for physical training, character development, instilling loyalty and a willingness to sacrifice for the nation, an education system seemingly designed to create obedient, physically fit citizens.
He even criticizes aesthetic pacifists, calls for a system that cultivates a dareful personification of manly force, and in women capable of bringing men into the world. Very traditional militaristic views on gender roles.
A clear rejection of intellectualism and pacifism in his vision of education, prioritizing blind loyalty, militaristic values, rather than critical thinking, individual expression.
Almost as if he's trying to create a generation of soldiers, ready to follow his orders without question. Quite disturbing when you think about it.
It raises serious concerns: suppression of individual thought, the potential for indoctrination. It reminds us of the importance of education systems that foster critical thinking, a respect for diverse perspectives.
Okay, so let's shift our focus to foreign policy. Hitler expresses a lot of frustration with Germany's position after World War I, particularly its perceived weakness towards France and the shameful Treaty of Versailles.
This resentment towards the Treaty of Versailles, the perceived humiliation of Germany, becomes a recurring theme, a powerful tool used to rally support, justify his aggressive foreign policy goals.
He argues that Germany needs a clear, aggressive foreign policy, aimed at securing its rightful place in the world, already envisioning a Germany dominating Europe.
This ambition for dominance, coupled with resentment toward other nations, paints a bleak picture of his intentions, laying the groundwork for expansionist policies that would eventually lead to World War II.
And to symbolize this break from the past, the creation of his new Germany, he rejects the old black, white, and red flag, advocating for a new symbol for a new state, built upon his ideology.
This rejection of traditional symbols underscores his revolutionary ambitions, not simply seeking to reform Germany, aiming for a complete transformation based on his own radical vision.
Fascinating. And a bit terrifying to see how clearly he articulates his plans and ambitions in Mein Kampf, like reading a blueprint for one of the darkest chapters in human history.
It is a stark reminder: the importance of understanding these historical events, even if they are difficult to confront. Analyzing these texts, understanding the forces that shaped them, perhaps we can learn to prevent such tragedies from happening again.
And that's what we're here for, to learn from the past. Use those lessons to help humanity navigate the future.
It's worth noting, how methodical Hitler was in his approach to building the Nazi movement. Mein Kampf isn't just some rambling manifesto. It's like a detailed plan for gaining and consolidating power.
Absolutely. He details the importance of organization, propaganda,
Yeah.
exploiting existing social and political divisions. It's almost like reading a playbook for a political takeover.
And his analysis of propaganda is particularly chilling when you consider his actions later on. He really understood how to use, simple, emotionally charged language to create that sense of shared identity and purpose, while simultaneously, demonizing opponents, scapegoating minorities.
And he repeatedly criticizes Germany's propaganda efforts during World War I, right? Contrasting them with the perceived effectiveness of the Allied campaigns, almost like he's studying their techniques to avoid those mistakes.
And, based on the effectiveness of Nazi propaganda leading up to and during World War II, it seems he learned his lessons well. He was a master at manipulating public opinion, creating a climate of fear, paranoia. That allowed him to consolidate his power.
Let's shift gears a bit and look at his ideas on leadership. He's clearly a proponent of strong, decisive leadership, bordering on authoritarianism, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
He sees the parliamentary system as weak and indecisive, which aligns with his desire for that centralized, absolute power structure.
He romanticizes this idea of a single charismatic leader, embodying the will of the people, guiding the nation towards greatness. It's a dangerous ideal, dismissing the importance of checks and balances, democratic processes, the protection of individual rights.
And he repeatedly emphasizes the importance of a leader's ability to inspire and control the masses, to create this almost cult-like devotion to his vision for the nation.
And this vision is deeply concerning, wouldn't you say? Prioritizing blind obedience and loyalty over critical thinking, dissent. It creates fertile ground for a totalitarian regime, where the leader's word becomes law and opposition is crushed.
His emphasis on the supposed threat posed by Jewish people is also deeply disturbing. He uses anti-Semitism as a tool to unite his followers, creating this common enemy, a scapegoat for Germany's problems.
His portrayal of Jewish people is filled with these harmful stereotypes, conspiracy theories. He accuses them of controlling the media, manipulating financial systems, undermining traditional German values, baseless accusations rooted in prejudice, designed to fuel fear and hatred.
And these accusations aren't just rhetoric. They lay the groundwork for the systematic persecution, the genocide that would occur under his leadership.
It's a stark reminder of how dangerous prejudice scapegoating can be. When leaders exploit these sentiments for political gain, the consequences are catastrophic.
Now, turning to his vision for Germany's future. He expresses a clear desire for expansion and dominance, outlines his belief that Germany needs to reclaim its rightful place as a leading power in Europe, even if it means resorting to military force.
Right. His foreign policy goals are driven by this resentment over the Treaty of Versailles, this belief in German exceptionalism. He feels that Germany was unjustly punished after World War I and that it deserves to dominate the European continent.
And he specifically targets France as a primary enemy, blaming them for the perceived injustices inflicted upon Germany, advocating for a future war to reclaim lost territories, establish German dominance.
This blatant desire for expansion, military conquest, it should have been a warning sign for the rest of the world. It foreshadows the aggressive foreign policies that led to World War II, the deaths of millions.
It's striking how he combines this thirst for conquest with his ideas about racial purity, arguing that Germany needs Lebensraum, living space, to accommodate its growing population and fulfill its destiny as a master race.
This concept of Lebensraum is central to his justification for expanding eastward. Into Eastern Europe, Russia, he believes the Slavic people are racially inferior. Obstacles to German expansion that need to be removed.
And this belief in racial hierarchy, this need for territorial expansion, would ultimately lead to the horrors of the Holocaust, the devastation of Eastern Europe during World War II.
It's a chilling reminder of the dangers of combining nationalist ambition with these racist ideologies. It leads to a dehumanization of the other, creates a moral justification for conquest, oppression, even genocide.
His views on education also play into this vision of a racially pure and dominant Germany, advocating for a system that prioritizes physical fitness, obedience, blind loyalty to the state, rather than critical thinking and individual expression.
Right. He envisions an education system designed to mold young people into unquestioning soldiers, willing to sacrifice themselves for the glory of the nation. A system that discourages dissent, independent thought, creates a population easily manipulated and controlled.
He even criticizes traditional academic subjects, arguing that they're too focused on intellectual pursuits, not enough on building character, physical strength. He wants to create a generation of warriors, not scholars.
His ideal student is physically fit, obedient, deeply indoctrinated in Nazi ideology. He lays out specific curricula, training regimens to achieve this goal. It's a chilling vision, an education system designed to serve the needs of a totalitarian state, not the needs of the individual.
And his views on women are equally disturbing. He sees their primary role as being mothers, homemakers, responsible for bearing and raising children who will strengthen the Aryan race.
Promotes a very traditional, restrictive view of women's roles, denying them equal opportunities, limiting their aspirations to the domestic sphere, strips women of their agency and autonomy, reduces them to instruments for the reproduction of the master race.
He even criticizes what he calls the emancipation of women, argues that it weakens the nation, undermines traditional family values. It's clear he views women as subservient to men, their primary purpose, wives and mothers.
His ideas about women are deeply rooted in patriarchal, misogynistic attitudes prevalent in Europe at the time. They reflect a fear of female empowerment, a desire to maintain those traditional gender roles that keep women subordinate.
It's remarkable how all of these ideas, his views on leadership, propaganda, racial purity, education, women, they coalesce into this singular vision, a totalitarian state dominated by a single party, a supreme leader.
Mein Kampf isn't just a book, it's a blueprint for the Nazi regime. It lays out in frightening detail the ideology that would lead to the horrors of World War II, the Holocaust.
It's a chilling reminder of how dangerous ideas can be when combined with political ambition, a disregard for human dignity.
And it's essential that we study these ideas, not to condone them, but to understand the dangers of extremism, prejudice, authoritarianism.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, delving into some of the most disturbing aspects of Mein Kampf, but there's still more to explore.
In the next part, we'll examine Hitler's rejection of those traditional symbols, his vision for a new German art and culture, and his plans for territorial expansion.
As we get further into Mein Kampf, it's really striking how Hitler combines, his grand vision for Germany with this rejection of its past. He seems really focused on symbols, their power to shape perception.
You're right. He spends a lot of time critiquing those old symbols of the German state, especially, well, the black, white, and red flag. He views them as representing weakness, decline, a past that needs to be, discarded to make way for his new Germany.
He even describes his process of designing the Nazi flag, the swastika on that red background. He talks about the colors, the visual impact, how it evokes emotion.
Yeah, this meticulous attention to detail, it shows the importance he placed on symbolism. Aesthetics. He understood that symbols can unite people, instill pride, belonging, even inspire, fanaticism.
It's like he's creating a brand for his movement, something visually striking, emotionally powerful.
Yeah.
To capture the imagination of the masses.
Exactly. And this goes beyond just flags, banners. He outlines a vision for a new German art and culture, one rooted in what he sees as traditional German values and aesthetics.
He specifically criticizes what he calls the decadence of modern art. He calls for a return to those classical forms, themes, glorifying strength, heroism, the Aryan race.
This rejection of modern art, it's part of a broader effort to control, shape German culture, to create a society where art, music, literature, even architecture, they all serve the goals of the Nazi state, reinforce its ideology.
And this desire for control, it also shows up in his foreign policy. He constantly stresses the need for Germany to expand its territory, particularly eastward into Eastern Europe, Russia.
He justifies this by using Lebensraum, right, arguing that Germany needs more living space for its growing population to fulfill its destiny as a, dominant power.
But it's more than just wanting land. It's this belief in racial hierarchy, the superiority of the German people. He sees the Slavic people, those who live in those territories, as racially inferior, obstacles to expansion that need to be removed.
And this belief, this need for expansion, it leads to the horrors of World War II, the Holocaust. It shows just how dangerous ideas can be when combined with power and military might.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Mein Kampf, it's a challenging, disturbing text filled with hatred, prejudice, a disregard for human dignity.
It is crucial that we engage with these texts, even if uncomfortable. By understanding the ideas behind Hitler's rise, we can be more vigilant against similar threats today.
It reminds us of the importance of critical thinking, empathy, commitment to democratic values. We must always be cautious of leaders who use fear, hatred, and prejudice to gain power.
And we must be ready to challenge those ideologies, always. The lessons of history, even the dark ones, can guide us to a more just and peaceful future.
Mein Kampf may be from the past, but the ideas within it, they still resonate today. By understanding its message, the context, we can better prevent such horrors from happening again.
Remember, knowledge is power. The more we understand the forces that shape the past, the better we are at shaping the future.